right, guys. Today we are welcoming back to the show Drew Wiard. And dude, I am so excited to have you back on. You are still to this day our fourth most popular episode that we've ever had, back in episode 97, Becoming a Cash Flow Master. And you have done an incredible amount since we recorded that episode like 18 months ago. So, dude, I'm really excited to have you back on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Now I'm fired up to try to become number one. So we'll see what we come up with.
You can do it. I mean, if you drop some good content, it'll definitely happen. I will say the algorithms work against us these days because the way that they track downloads now is different. And so it's going to have to be like 2x as good. So that's the real big challenge. Is you're going to have to go above and beyond.
Well, 10x is easier than 2x. So
that's what they say.
Yeah, said Drew Wiard. You guys quote him right there. Go and take that and put it on an Instagram post or something, and make sure you tag the right person.
At the Flying Investor.
Yeah, yeah, man. So either way, you have been up to a ton over the last 18 months. I guess, to give people a really brief level, and you can dive into details on it, but you have acquired 3 businesses since we talked to you last. You have bought and sold a lot of real estate. You've done some commercial deals. Your whole mindset around real estate and everything else has changed. And after just reconnecting with you, I think we were on a GoBundance Zoom call. We just decided you had to come back on, man, because you are, I would say, it's such an evolved entrepreneur from the last, like 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago when we last chatted.
Yeah. It's been an adventure, to say the least. So the long backstory was that I did medicine for 15 years. I walked away from that or retired in summer of 22. And so we're coming up on 2 years of that. But I will say, like, once you cast off those shackles, then the evolution started, right? Like I had a freedom to figure out like who I really was, what I really wanted, what my core principles are, like all of that kind of stuff. Right. So I've been really leaning into that. Like you said, 18 months ago, we bought business number 1. It was in manufacturing in Detroit, which I know nothing about manufacturing. Like, what on earth took me to manufacturing? That could be a whole
what
episode.
On earth took you to Detroit either?
Like, well, that would be another fun discussion. But a couple months later, then we merged with our sole competitor there. And so now we own a 300-mile radius for the service that we provide in that area. And then we just acquired our 3rd business, which is actually pretty rad. It's a comic book business where, like, if you're an indie artist for comics, you basically come to us and we help you take your art, put it into books. People then take them to Comic-Cons and sell them and do all sorts of things. So
interesting.
I got so many questions on this. The first question is, like, how did you even know, like, this is a good business to buy? Like, what got you into buying a business?
Yeah, sure. I mean, not to get too far in the weeds on like how you analyze a business. I think, like, if you're asking mindset, like what even took me there, since real estate was firing on all cylinders. For me, I'm a passive investing guy. I don't mind wholesaling. I don't mind doing flips. They're not my favorite, but they get taxed at the highest, which I don't like in the least, right? So I'm a buy and hold guy, but we all know that's a really slow game to play. Like, you start playing in your 20s or 30s, and by the 40s, you start feeling it. By the time I get to my 50s, I'll be really, really happy that I went there. But it's a slow game. Business acquisition and scaling that up and increasing the multiples that you can sell at downstream, or just the cash flow that those businesses throw off, can be a much, much more rapid way to grow your cash flows or a big exit on the back end. And so that was really the game, is to own businesses that spin off cash. We know they're going to get taxed pretty highly, but then you take all that money and you hide it mostly in commercial real estate for all the tax advantages. And so that's kind of the left-hand, right-hand strategy. And then I got a lot of other little real estate
stuff. I love it. In the background. Make massive income so that you can invest in passive income, because passive income is expensive to get.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. Yeah, that's our whole tagline, is to make massive income before passive income. That's like our tagline for our podcast and our scale community. So I'm assuming that it was super easy to figure that out, right? You just followed Cody Sanchez on Instagram and then just like sent her a couple DMs and she just sent you a thumbs up back and you're like, I got it. This is going to be easy.
Yeah. Slam dunk. That's all there is to it. Right. That's how all the cool kids are doing it, for sure.
Yeah. Right. No, but like real talk though, like, how did you even begin this process? Like, what was the did you use like a business broker? Did you like market for these? I know you have a couple of partners.
Yeah, really good question. So my partner Tyler, he gets a lot of credit because he's absolutely brilliant, and he had quit his job maybe 4 or 5 months before I did, and we had already agreed we were going to do a bunch of commercial real estate together and had started buying things. But he had always kind of wanted to own a business, and once he got rid of his job, he jumped into a mastermind that kind of talks about it and talks about the process of how do you find the kind of business that you want. I didn't join that mastermind, but I read some of the books and I kind of followed along with him. And then when I dipped out, we were kind of teed up and ready to go shopping. And so it was listed with a business broker. We looked at multiple businesses. Some were a good fit, some weren't. But we found it and went to visit and seemed to be a good fit. So we threw out an offer. They took someone else's offer. But then came back to us a couple of weeks later because that first buyer lost their ass in the crypto meltdown about that time. So they couldn't liquidate and buy the business.
That seems a weird thing for someone to do, to go from crypto to printing books. I feel like that's literally the opposite.
Yeah, but it sounds like somebody that's just following social media doing what people say to do.
No shit.
Well, they certainly could have been. The other thing is maybe it's an easy out if you don't have the money and you got to come up with a sexy excuse, and Bitcoin's in all the news. Like, I don't know.
That sounds I lost my money. Yeah. So let me ask you this question then, Drew. Like, when you talk about the business broker, finding the deal, did you guys have like these core pillars before you actually were like, we're going to do printing? Were you like, hey, we want it to be manufacturing, or we want it to be something even more broad? Like, hey, we want, like, one of the thoughts I have is like, I would want to buy a business that's scalable by increasing marketing and sales.
Sure. So I think the mistake that most people make is if they're thinking about buying a business, they think about what kind of business they want to buy, what sort of niche they want to be in, and they limit themselves just to that.
Right.
I think it can be healthy to say, I don't want X. Like, for example, my partner and I didn't want any SaaS businesses or like software as a subscription. Like, we didn't want to buy tech because it's not real and tangible, and we don't come from that world. So if it went sideways, we don't have the expertise to course correct.
Sure.
But what we really wanted was something that had revenues north of $4 million and at least an EBITDA of $750,000. Because at that size, you should have some front office staff, some leadership, some bookkeeping, maybe some HR, like things so that we don't have to carry that full burden. We weren't married to manufacturing, but we like the idea of like creating real things that the real world needs, regardless of tastes and preferences and things like that. And so we had a series of those qualifiers. We didn't want to go more than about 3 or 4 hours from home, and Detroit's 3 or 4 hours. And so that's what we found.
Interesting. So I guess when you were going through all of that, I mean, like there's obviously a lot of things that you don't know about printing books. Like, I'm assuming there was people there that already knew about all the equipment, how, like, what the actual process looks like. Or is it kind of just a simple process where you just went in and they had good enough like SOPs that you were able to just sort of figure it out yourself?
We had a lot to learn. We don't come from the print and binding world in the least. So we had to learn a lot about equipment, a lot of lessons learned. If I could do it over, I would have hired like an equipment broker or assessor to come in and say, okay, these machines are this many years old. They're going to last this much longer. They should be worth this. Given the age of those machines, we probably overpaid. But you don't know those things till you get in there. And so many lessons you learn along the way. Like, I will take that and use it going forward. If I'm ever buying another business with equipment, we're going to have someone tell us exactly what it's worth, so I don't overpay, or I understand the risks that I'm taking on.
Yeah. What's like the financial structure on something like this? Did you like sell a bunch of rentals and buy this thing cash? Did you seller finance? You get an SBA loan?
Yeah. Really good question. So, to put it simply, I think after the inventory and the work in process and like all these things that you have to give value to, I think we paid like 2.7 million, something like that. We got an SBA loan for 80%, which, by the way, if you think getting real estate loans is difficult, the SBA and the government are going to turn you inside out. I'm still walking funny from.
I've heard it's not a great experience. Yeah,
it's an amazing product once you get it, but if and when we get another one, I'm going to time block a month just to really dig into it, because even though I'm typically very well prepared, I was ill prepared. But the seller carried back 10%, and then we brought 10%. I brought 5. My partner brought another 5. So when it was all said and done, I think like I was all in for 127,000, something like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty wild, right? So you're on 127,000 for a business you said that was, it had EBITDA, what would you say, 750?
Something like that.
Yeah. And so like how much of that is actually like take home to you at that point? Or I mean, I guess you're allowed to share that information. I know business stuff gets weird.
Yeah, I can share that information. Admittedly, we went into it like we have real estate holdings and we do the direct to seller stuff that you guys do as well. And so we have other means of income. So for us, we had quit our jobs, but we didn't need like huge salaries. So we knew we have old equipment. We've got some strategic things that we need to do at this business. So we gave ourselves very modest salaries, but we also covered all of our health insurance as well. So like he's got 3 kids, I've got 4 kids. We bought ourselves really nice insurance packages and the company just pays for the whole thing. Yes. There's other advantages like vehicles, business expenses, things like that. So we're only paying ourselves about $65 a year. Could be a lot more, but we wouldn't pay down debt. We've had to buy some new equipment, things like that. So
that brings up a good question on that piece. When you talk about the pay down debt. So say, as far as a proportion of the EBITDA, if you were looking at a business, and I'm thinking about this from a listener standpoint, because it sounds like, shoot, I'm going to go buy the same business. It sounds great, right?
I don't know that I would absolutely recommend such things. There are pros and cons.
It's not that easy, right? But like out of 750,000 EBITDA, you're going to have some debt pay down. Is there like a threshold where you're like, yeah, I'm not going to touch that because the debt payment is not going to be worth the squeeze? Or is there anything that you would look at on that thing? Because I kind of think about it from like a rental property standpoint. Hey, at some point, like there's not enough cap rate spread between the interest rate, right? And so on an SBA loan, you're paying probably 9 or 10%. I don't know. And then you have a balloon at maybe 10 years. And so your monthly debt payment's probably a lot.
It's bonkers, man. So I get what you're saying. Like if you have real estate debt at 3 or 4% and you like that asset, you would not pay that off early unless you're, a Ramsey follower, which to each their own, but it ain't for me. SBA debt right now, it's floating rate and it is floating at a god awful juicy 11%.
Nice.
Okay. So your loan will go up and down with that rate.
I have only known a reality where it goes up. So yes, I would love to see it come back down. So, but admittedly, we stress tested it up to 11, which we thought was nuts. Like there's no way it's going to 11, but we'll stress test it.
You're waiting for the rate cut right now. I know it. You're itching.
I'll take it. Yeah, I would take it. But to answer your question, it amortizes over 10 years. The whole thing's due. So if we just make our payments, we will have paid down, I forget what that loan was, like 1.8 million or something like that.
Not a lot.
Years. What's that?
You wouldn't have paid down a lot if you're at 11%.
Well, the percentage
you have to pay.
sucks,
you still have to pay. It balloons out and at 10 years.
Well, it's a 10-year AM.
Yeah.
10-year AM. Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So like in contrast to real estate, you're used to thinking 15, 20, maybe 30 years if you're getting like residential mortgages and things. They just take forever to pay those, even if you're at 4% or whatever you got locked in at. Whereas this, like, I don't like paying 8%, but I'm already a year and a half into it. And I mean, I've paid down a couple $100,000, so that's the other thing with business is not only can you spin up the cash flows, but if you can find a path to paying down your debt, like even if say that we have just a huge year in 2024 and I've got an extra $500,000. Well, I could take an extra 50, my partner could take 50 and we could take an extra 400, pay it down on that debt and ask the SBA to re-am it, not extend the deadline, but just spread the payments out. And that monthly payment gets lower and just helps the business. And so I'm a principal pay down guy. So
I think there's just a lot with that like from the audience, like if you're not familiar, and I have a little knowledge, but I've been talking to people about this just from some general interest in understanding and educating myself. And there's a lot to learn and understand about the SBA process or conventional loans and why you would also maybe want to buy a certain size business because at some point in time, you need enough EBITDA to like really actually do stuff with it. You see a lot of people wanting to go buy businesses and in my opinion are thinking maybe too small because what it takes to grow a business and scale a business while you're also paying off debt is a lot.
Yeah. You make a fantastic point. And honestly, like it may sound to the audience that like a $4.5 million business, or I'm sorry, 4.5 in revenue, but we bought it for like 2.7.
Right.
I would not steer people away from that. But for me and my partner, we will not buy another one this small again. Like we're only going bigger because the bigger you are, the more front office you can afford, the more, key soldiers you can put in place to really lead the teams. And, so yeah, we're not going any smaller. I think people do make the mistake of buying that, $1 million business that throws off $200,000 thinking it's going to be great. And if you want a job, you just bought yourself a job, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But I didn't want a job. I wanted to be an owner. And those are two different things.
Yeah. Exactly. So I guess what's your sort of long-term plan with this thing, right? Like you must have an exit strategy, because I know from your real estate conversations that we've had, your strategy's always been to just hold that stuff forever, and to build a large portfolio. Is your goal to do the same thing with these businesses? Or are you trying to do like a bundle and exit? Or
it's a really good question. There's not going to be a real satisfying answer, but what I will tell you is, Tyler and I, my partner, we don't buy anything that we aren't willing to sit on for 10 years. I don't know that we're in any rush to sell it. For me personally, it's going to be driven by what my core values are, right? And one of those really center around freedom. I want to have ever increasing degrees of freedom for myself and the people around me, right? So as long as that business is increasing my degrees of freedom, as far as time, financial freedom, all of those things, great. I'm in a season right now where I am in the trenches because we bought the third business. We're moving them all into a building. We could talk about all that if you wanted to, but so time wise, I'm really constrained, but what we're building will throw off hopefully silly cash flow. And if someone comes along and throws us an offer, I mean, like if someone comes to your residence and offers you $1 million for it and you paid 300, you're going to at least have a conversation, right?
Totally.
So I think we'd be open to conversation, but that it's not the goal to necessarily sell right away. I like the idea of acquiring more businesses because you usually buy them at like a multiple of EBITDA. So EBITDA times 3, EBITDA times 4, something like that. Yeah. But as your business grows bigger, you can buy them at EBITDA and 2.5. But as soon as you roll it into yours, if yours is big enough, it might become a 6x value immediately without changing anything.
And that's just because of size.
The roll-up strategy. Yeah, absolutely. Because there are companies, private equity and things like that, who'd be willing to go buy a $20 million revenue business that has EBITDA of $4 million every year, and they'll pay you 7 times for that.
And the way I explain that to people when they're like, that makes no sense, they'd want to pay more than a smaller place would. But like, I remember Warren Buffett talking about this, and he has so much money that in his fund that his biggest problem is there aren't things big enough for him to buy. So he can only buy 1 or 2 deals a year, honestly, if that. And that's why he's sitting on so much cash, is in his mind, there's just not anything good enough that's big enough to buy. And so private equity is the same way. They need to place money. And so they're willing to pay for a larger multiple for bigger deals because it's it's better for their business model.
Well, and they need businesses that are on cruise control. They don't have the ability to get down in the nitty gritty unless they absolutely have to, right? So they want to buy multiple businesses, all that are trucking along and doing well. Right. And, anything less than, I don't know what the right numbers would be, but 10 million in revenue and 2 million in EBITDA, they're not even going to sniff it.
Right. Yeah. Yep. I mean, I think a good comparison for people in this that are listening that are like more real estate inclined, it's like, would you rather buy 10 single family homes for $1 million and $100,000 each, or would you rather buy a 10-unit property for $1 million?
Exactly.
Right. It's going to be easier to manage. It's going to be easier to bring in like sophisticated property management, easier to market. And it's like a singular asset. Same basic principle. Yeah. How has all of this, like, I would say, new education experience with business affected your view of real estate? Because that was your jam for like a long time.
Yeah. If anything, I think it's probably solidified my love for real estate. It certainly hasn't superseded it. What I'm finding is the stuff that I put in place years ago just keeps getting better. Rents go up. I pay it down a little bit more. It's all under management. I don't even have to think about it. It just keeps getting better. So it's doing everything it was supposed to do, and it is allowing me to go do this other thing over here where like the personal growth is staggering. I mean, every 3 to 6 months, it's a new journey, a new revelation. And we've had some ups and downs. We've had a couple of very scary moments, even in the last couple of months where, you have to check yourself and, is the business where it needs to be? And, so you have to fix some things, but it has caused me to grow and evolve a lot. It's given me a lot of purpose too. Like I really enjoy fixing problems and finding solutions to things that other people can't seem to figure out. And so I enjoy that, but that's a windy answer to say. For me, it's real estate, period.
Yeah. And so you're taking that money and rolling it into more properties. I mean, now that you have these higher ROI opportunities, don't you get itchy though? Just looking at all your equity that you have in these rentals and you're like, man, I could go and pile this into more businesses. And like you said, 10X is easier than 2X. You're like, you're rolling the 2X game over with your real estate, especially in the Midwest, man. You could go and double down and buy all the bookbinding printing businesses in Michigan if you wanted to.
Yeah. You could, right now, those businesses, as we merge them, as we acquire new ones, like it is growing and expanding at a rate. I don't want it to go any faster. Like we've got enough that we've got to figure out. And so, maybe in 6 months, 12 months, when the dust kind of settles and, we're moving all of our shops into one big factory now. And that is an adventure in and of itself.
Like literally moving them into the same building?
Yeah. Physical moves. So we're all in the same spot. So we've been hiring riggers and contractors and like people who come in with huge flatbeds to move these monster machines. Wow. It's pretty mind blowing.
And you own that building with this recent acquisition. Did you buy that building too?
When we merged with our partner, the partner owns the building.
Right. Okay.
So we don't have to play any landlord games or anything like that anymore. So yes, I could sell my real estate and do more business. But right now I have all the business that I want. We're going to go from 4.5 million in revenue when we bought it to now we should crest 10 million in revenue across all three businesses before the end of the year.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's wild. And we've done it mostly through acquisition. We haven't even started with the growth and expanding of markets and more sales and all that kind of sort of thing.
That's what I was thinking. Like from an ownership standpoint, are you guys working? Obviously, you're doing an acquisition strategy now. Are you guys thinking or working on a growth strategy beyond acquisition? Like, hey, how do we increase our sales?
I think right now we're working mostly on stabilization and finding all of our efficiencies, right? When you buy three businesses, you only want to do that if it makes life easier. So you don't have to have three bookkeepers, you have one, right? You don't need to have three HR people, you have one. And we're also trying to merge three cultures into one business. And that's probably the hardest thing. Steering culture, behavior. Like, again, we had two companies that merged. They were competitors for 30 years. They don't like each other.
They got swords in the break room ready to go at it.
Yeah. So they're playing well together. They're doing a really good job, but like that just takes time, lots of time. So growth strategies will probably come, but we got to make sure we're all singing from the same hymnal first. And that'll take 3 to 6 months. But to Mike's point about, do you want to sell it and buy more business? We might eventually, but for now, I'm just going to reposition the real estate that I don't like into real estate that I do like. So
and just acknowledging a better return on equity for the headache, which I know is a big thing that we've always sort of harped on. Is if you have these properties that have a lot of equity, they're not getting the returns that you want, and there's like sort of upcoming CapEx items or there's sort of reoccurring issues, it's okay to sell those to move on to something else, whether that's more real estate or private investments or buying a business or whatever that looks like. But no, man, something I really like about what you just said there, Drew, and that I've always appreciated about you is you have such like a stable, like long-term vision. Like there's so much wisdom behind so many of the ways that you think about things, for people that like, I don't know, are trying to figure out those first steps, like how to kind of get into buying a business like this. Like where do they even start? Because, it's not just following Cody Sanchez or whatever random dude on Instagram and, reading their little tweet post that they make and pretending like that's going to teach you anything.
Yeah, I think, man, there's a million and one things I could say about that. I think one thing I would encourage people to do is not chase things that are popular, right? If you've done real estate and business long enough, like you've seen some of the cyclic trends come and go, right? 10 years ago, flips were everything, and it's HGTV and how sexy they can be on TV, and then multifamily came and all the kids are doing multifamily. And I've been involved with that. I'm not knocking it because it can be amazing, but there's a lot of people this year who are eating a shit sandwich in the multifamily, in the commercial world. And my heart goes out to some of them. Self-storage has been the hottest thing. And like right now, buying businesses, Cody Sanchez and like all these other people, like they're just, so I see people chasing the trends. I would tell you, like, absolutely do not chase the trends. If the trend aligns with who you are and what you want and where you want to go long-term, then absolutely. That means there'll be a lot of good resources for you. But if you're chasing trends, you're just going to get exhausted. And every 72 months or something, you're just going to be frustrated and go on to the next thing.
Yeah, reinventing yourself every time you try to do something new. And you see that a lot with entrepreneurs. And honestly, there's probably been 5 or 6, maybe 10 different things that Mike or I have had to say no to that have distracted us, that we've even started and we've had to turn off and realize, well, that was a distraction. So it's easy to get caught up in like that trend or that shiny object syndrome. The one thing that I'm thinking about, and I heard Matty A from the Millionaire Mindcast, he did a little like 10-minute monologue about this, is like when things get hard, like what do you do? And like how you lean into that. And being hard, nothing easy, like let's say, like I think he's like Jeff Bezos, like Amazon. Like you don't think his life is hard. Yes, he's a billionaire, but he still has hard things, and he's choosing to do hard things. That's how he got to where he's at. You're choosing to do hard things, Drew. The challenge that I think me and other people might come through is like, am I doing the right hard things? Is this the right hard thing, or am I wasting 72 months? Do you have any kind of thoughts on, like, because I know you've chosen to do hard things, of like things that you've looked at or that you've done to like get through those hard times and stick with it and not bounce to something else because it got too hard, or that you found that was like, this is the wrong hard thing?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. I don't know that I have a really good relatable example. I tend to be that guy who has the grit and the stick-to-itive nature enough that usually I power through, and that has served me well. I will say, like, my professional career, right? Like I got my doctorate in residency and practice medicine and all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't that it was bad. It was great for a season, but I let that season go on too long. Like it was time to dip out. And so I don't know if this is exactly what you're driving at, but I should have known who I was and what I was really about, and what might have made me happy and what was definitely not making me happy. And I should have made that pivot probably a little bit sooner. But you make a great point, man. I see a lot of people who are, just squeezing that lemon, and there's no juice coming out of it anymore, so fair point.
So I guess to expand on that, do you, when you're looking at your sort of opportunity cost for your time and your money like that, do you have like a set of, I know you said principles, you said freedom is a big one of them. Do you have like things that you look at in terms of like how excited things make you feel, like things that make you exhausted versus like financial potential? Like, did you create like your own sort of set of boundaries like that? Or do you just kind of like go day by day and see where the wind blows? And then if you decide that it's time to turn it off, you turn it off.
I tell you what, I'll give you an answer to kind of what I think you're asking. I don't know that I've got the perfect answer to like a tool that helps me gauge, like, am I in alignment that way? But like,
yeah, and it doesn't need to be a tool. I mean, like you specifically, like, cause I think it's different for everybody, right? Like, some people are quitters. Honestly, I think it's a little hard and they quit. Other people, like Dan was saying, is they're stubborn and they will just beat on the same thing forever. But you've changed your path several times. And so I'm curious, like for you personally, what exactly are like the key principles outside of just freedom that?
Yeah. So this year I really defined my core principles, and I did that out of, we all set goals every year. And I would have told you that I was very good at setting goals in years past. Like I've studied them in the professional world. I studied them with you guys and GoBundance and like all that kind of stuff. And I can set quality, measurable, challenging goals that will take us from X to Y by this date. And it's very measurable. And that's a good way to do it. But this year, like when I was trying to write those goals, I wanted to challenge myself to say, why do I want 12 houses a month? Why do I want to buy a third business, even though I know it's going to take a lot of my time? Like, why do I want these things, right? Like, why am I going to the gym 4 times a week? You know? So I really had to kind of set up my core principles. I came up with 5 of them, and I've got them written on my board here. They're freedom, well-being, abundance, growth, and time. So those 5 things. And basically I use those core values to then draft my vision of what I want my life to look like, right? Today and tomorrow, and it's relationships with kids, and it's how much freedom and what sort of health I want to be in. And it's all kind of guided by those core principles. And then once I have the vision for my life, then I can write the goals that will point to the different parts of my vision that I want to have. So like I want to go do activities with my grandkids. It's not just I want to meet them. I want to go hiking in Sedona with my grandkids. That's why I'm going to the gym today at 40 something. Right. So you have your core principles, helps me cast my vision. The goals that I will set continually point towards the vision. And then it's really just a matter of setting your habits. Like going to the gym 4 times a week is a habit, right? Staying under or within my macros every single day. Like those are my habits. And so if you can figure out how to set the habits, they drive the goals create the vision. And as long as the vision's in alignment with your core principles, like it distills so much clarity into it. It's incredible.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. And as you've shown too, right? Same thing translates across building your real estate portfolio, running your flipping business, bookbinding businesses in a different city from where you live. It's all the same things sort of compound on themselves, right?
Yeah.
And I guess one thing before everybody that's listening to this stops listening to Collecting Keys and starts caring about real estate altogether and just goes and pursues buying businesses. Now we've talked about the basic numbers. Do you think that it is a wise move for somebody with no business experience to be trying to do what you did? Because something that I see so frequently, and honestly, it kind of bugs me because I feel like it's out of ignorance and people don't understand the challenge and the risk that they're taking, is all the time I see these people saying, I want to buy a business so that I can leave my W-2. So like, my goal is to buy cash flowing businesses so I can make $10,000 a month and leave my W-2. They talk about like they're buying fucking duplexes. It doesn't make sense to me, unless I'm being ignorant. Like, do you think that that's an appropriate thing for people to try and do? Or should they maybe use real estate as like the gateway to build that bank account, build the skills to run a business? Or does real estate not need to be involved at all?
Yeah, I think there's probably a million different scenarios and a million different answers to that question. I do think people are probably too cavalier about it. What you need to understand, like if you get an SBA loan, they're personally guaranteed. And so like we've hit a couple of rocky places where, you know, our equipment dies and new equipment's $3 million, right? And if my business fails, they're coming for my house. And then it goes up to like federal level and they can come for the assets and all the things
they go after you
protected. Right. So like you are taking staggering risk to do this. The other point I would make, like if you're like real estate could be a million different things, but if it's real estate, like we all do, like this direct to seller business, you're already running a business. If you're not good at running this business, you're not going to be good at running another business. Right.
So say that again one more time.
Yeah. If you're not good at running this business, you're probably not going to be good at running the other business.
Exactly.
And I don't know how to say it more clearly than that.
People
you find something that you're more inclined to do or you get more excited about. But if, you know, unless you just chose a market that's not doing well, I would tell you pick a different market. Don't go pick another business.
Right.
Totally. Yeah. And it's such a, I think people, it goes back to the shiny object syndrome thing, right? Is they struggle in one thing and they assume that they're magically going to be better at something else. And it almost gets like thrown off people's expectations by the sayings of like, oh, all the great entrepreneurs have like a graveyard of failures behind them. It's like, that's true, but also they're also typically kind of tangent to each other, right? Like it's not like the person that failed at like the bookbinding business went on and made an incredible, I don't know, airline manufacturing or like they started an airline or something, right? And there's
I think it's also thrown off by like eloquent speakers that make it seem easier and simplify it because they're eloquent speakers. And that the point of good speakers like that are to get people motivated. They're on stage and they're on Instagram, they're all over the internet. And so they make it seem more simple than it really is. And sometimes it is simple, but it's freaking hard. Like it's not easy. And then you get back on that conversation we had earlier of like, are you doing the right things? Are you choosing to do the hard things? And I think a lot of people don't choose to do the hard things. They don't want to.
Well, and I think in this example, at least my business experience is like, I did not know what all the hard was going to be. I knew it would be there, and I knew that I had the constitution to stand against it, but I did not know some of the hurdles and some of the terror that was going to come from moment to moment. And that's why I say a lot of personal development has happened to learn how to stand against those headwinds. You know, the other thing is like, I am grateful for my partner. I have told him I would never want to do this without you because he's great underwriting. He's great technically. He has an engineering mind and machinery and stuff like that. Whereas I take care of all the people and the HR, and like we had to let someone go this past week, and she's been with us for 10 years. Not a bad person, just not going to be a good fit for where we're going. And some people don't have the stomach to handle that situation. So I think you need to be really calculated with whether or not you should be acquiring businesses and not just learning from the influencers. I think you need to go talk to entrepreneurs who have been, you know, up to their ass in alligators and ask them, what did it take for you to survive this?
Yeah. Wow. Classic Indiana saying, up to your class. Up to your ass.
Yeah, because we have so many alligators here.
Yeah, so classic. Heard that one all the time.
Yeah.
So awesome, man. Well, super cool. I really appreciate all the details you shared there, Drew. And it's fascinating to see, I would say like how, I know it's new to you, but like how competent you seem like diving in. It's obvious that you're well studied and that you're going through the trenches. And I'm sure that you're kind of gone through the learning curve. Have you ever seen that where it's like when you first start, it's like, oh, I think I know a lot. And then once you're into it, you realize you actually know very, very little.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're in that phase pretty heavy right now, but that's very awesome, man.
Yep.
So cool. So we're going to dive into our end of show questions here.
All right.
So the first one, and we'll give you a little bit of leeway on this as well, since you've been a business guy, not just a real estate guy for the last 18 months.
Yeah.
But what is your craziest real estate or business story? And no telling stories about finding a dead person in a property, because I forgot to say that when we interviewed yesterday. And of course that was a story they told us. And I was like, damn it.
Yeah. You play the game long enough, you're going to have some dead people, unfortunately.
It definitely happens.
Yeah.
Well, and so just as a clarifier, you know, I've been in business a lot the last year and a half, but I've been buying and acquiring. I've got commercial properties for sale, and we've been doing 1031. So I'm still playing the real estate game. It's just not 100% of my focus at the moment. But yeah, I can give you a story. I better get a cartoon out of this though. We'll see how it goes. We'll see if it lives up to the hype. Once upon a time in the land of Indiana, Drew bought a duplex, and it came from direct mail once upon a time, back before all the cool kids were doing it. Great little duplex, kind of a sleeper community outside of out of my main market. Really excited, but I inherited two tenants. They were both just god awful. One side was a hoarder, and not like super gross, like bugs and rodents, but just so much crap in there. And I had to rehab this unit. He was paying like $400 a month or something, and it should have been $850 or something. So we go into this hoarder house, and John and I come to agreement. I say I serve my first, not eviction notice, but like 30-day end of term notice, right? Notice to vacate. And so he's vacating, he's getting all of his stuff out, is very agreeable, but he gets down to like the last little bit. And I go to get keys from him that day. He's freaking out. He can't find the cat. All right, well, how can I help? Where's the cat? Where's the cat? And I said, well, maybe it ran out when you were packing. No, the cat hasn't been outside for like 8 years. It does not want to go outside, but he can't find it. So I say, okay, well, you have to go. We're here to take keys, but I will put some food outside for it in case it ran away, because this house was empty. And I mean, empty. There's no way that this cat is hiding somewhere in here. It can't be. So anyways, he leaves. I run to Taco Bell to eat a real classic Indiana dinner, come back. There is a pile of cat shit in the apartment. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Where the hell? So I'm looking in the closets. I look even in the attic access. Like, I cannot find this cat, but it's there. And I said, okay, well, I can't explain it, but I got to go home. Come back tomorrow. 2 more piles of cat shit in different parts of the house. like it's driving me nuts because this cat is here, or else the ghost of the cat is here somewhere.
just pooping everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just doing it to piss me off. And I cannot find the stupid animal. And the place is locked up. The windows aren't open. The doors aren't open. There's no cat door, nothing. So I went and get a live trap so I don't hurt it if it shows up, but you put some cat food in there and trap it. And I dropped it off. I ran to my in-laws. I came back like in 20 minutes, and this mangy, disgusting cat was in this cage.
Oh,
my only guess is, and I hadn't thought about it up until this point, but this cat was huge. And I'm talking like big, puffy Persian, probably a really nice cat, actually. Massive cat. It had to have been down in the ductwork underneath the house, running through the ducts somewhere. But we had even like put flashlights down there. There was no sign. So anyways, we had ghost cats in the ductwork, and
a shitty ghost cat.
Yeah, shitty ghost cat. But we got it back to John. John was elated. Story ended up happy, and I still own that duplex.
It's a happy ending.
It is happy ending, and you got a great deal at the end of it too. So that's
no dead bodies in that one either. So.
Awesome. Yeah. But yeah, that's a good one. Cats are funny like that, man. When my wife and I moved out of our first apartment, we thought we lost our cat. Same thing. It was like completely empty apartment. My wife, I was like, had some friends that were helping us move. My wife was literally sitting in the living room weeping, like putting together like lost cat signs. And then the cat comes like chirping out of one of the bedrooms, and still no idea where it was. Like the entire apartment was 100% empty, and he must have like squeegeed up like against like the corner in one of the closets or something and just waited because we couldn't find him.
Dude didn't want to leave, man.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it was funny.
Wow.
So, but yeah, that's a good one, Drew. That's a very, very good story. All right. Next question. What is your number one tip for a small time investor looking to take their business to the next level?
Man, that's a good question. So much of my investing has evolved so much over the years that it's been a long time since I've been that first-time investor. I tell you what, I'll tell you what I'm teaching my kids right now, because I have 4 kids. My oldest are 23 and 19, so they're getting out into the world and all that. And we are working really hard to talk about house hacking and all that kind of stuff. I think if you haven't made your first investment, or there's an opportunity for you to live in one part of a duplex, triplex, fourplex, it is I would give anything to go back and do that as a young person, even with today's interest rates, even with how expensive as it is. I think I'm going to wind up selling my son one of mine, and I'll probably do the other for my daughter as well. We'll see. Nice. But I know it's tough to know whether or not house hacking has just been like this hype word and it's just the flavor of the year or whatever. The fundamentals are just spectacular. You will not regret it.
Yep. Yeah. It's a great way. If I always think that too, if I could go back and start over, I would have, had I known real estate was a great investment when I was 19 in the military, I would have bought a bunch of houses and rented it to a bunch of military people. Because the best part about that back then is if they don't pay the rent, you just call the military base and say, hey, dude's not paying his rent, and they make sure you get paid.
Yeah. I think we just probably spin it kind of wrong to young people, right? To talk about how it's going to set you up for the future and building wealth, but they don't care about that. Instead, if you like let them know that it will bring their expenses to zero so that they can purely focus on their craft of being a Twitch streamer for 18 hours a day,
or
then
beer pong,
dude, they don't do that shit anymore, man.
Really?
Gen Zs don't drink. Yeah.
Oh, straight edge.
Seriously.
It's funny. It's funny you say this, because my daughter, who's 23, is an influencer, and she makes deep into the 6 figures, just like perfumes her thing. And she has all these contracts with L'Oreal and Sephora and like New York and LA and all that kind of stuff. So she doesn't have W-2. That's how she's doing it.
That's how she's doing it. That is so cool.
That's awesome. I mean, and Gary Vee said that forever about how a lot of businesses, they need to understand that if you're expecting these young people to come work for you for 50 grand a year anymore, it's like, they're not going to do that. They can stay at home and make 60 grand a year on TikTok.
Yeah.
Like, honestly.
Yeah.
It's
that
not
sounds dumb, but I can tell you, being in the labor market right now, the labor market in the first year that we owned that business was agonizing trying to get people to work. It's starting to come back a little bit, but there's something to it for sure. It's tough.
Yeah. All the TikTokers that don't have the fine privilege, they're just like, I guess I better go get a job. I've learned lessons about myself.
That's right.
So, all right, Drew, where can people find you, follow you, and reach out to you?
At the Flying Investor, both on like TikTok, Instagram, and you can catch me on Facebook. Facebook Messenger is probably a decent place to find me as well.
There you go. Perfect. And if you guys want some more of Drew as well, you can go and check out Collecting Keys, episode 97. And he will dive even more into his real estate stuff that he used to do 18 months ago, but now still does, but does less of because he's focused on taking over the Detroit bookbinding mafia or whatever you're building out up there.
Money laundering business.
The money laundering business. Yeah.
Call it what it is.
So awesome. Well, dude, thanks so much for coming on the show. We really, really appreciate your time. And you guys, remember, people come on these shows because they want to engage with you. They want you to reach out with them. If they really didn't want to talk to anybody, they wouldn't go on a podcast or put anything on social media. So don't be shy. Hit up Drew. Ask him your questions about buying businesses, and he'll tell you if it's a good idea or if he thinks that you should just stick to your day job. He's a pretty honest guy if you can't tell. So we appreciate you all listening, and talk to you guys next week.
Thanks, Drew.
You bet.